One of the best things I've been able to do for myself as a lifter has been real consistent keeping a training log. Now, it hasn't always been this way, and it's really evolved over the course of my training career, because when I first started training, I didn't log anything. I'd go to the gym, do whatever I felt like, and when I'd go back the next day or whatever, I would just try to pick up where I left off. And not surprisingly, I didn't make the best progress doing that. When I started taking the gym more seriously, I started to try to log everything. I'd write down my exercises, my sets, my reps, my weights, and how much I weighed that day. And that was really helpful because each time I went in, I could see what I did previously, and I'd always try to improve upon those numbers and get better. And I started to make some pretty good progress. The gains started coming pretty quickly, as is the case for most people when they first get into training. Now, over time, however, is where I really saw the benefit of keeping a log, only because as your gains start to slow down some and the rate of return isn't as high as it used to be, you go through those phases of thinking, am I making progress? Have I plateaued? Do I need to change my training? Do I need to change my diet? And being able to reference a log from 6 months ago, a year ago, or even greater to get a longer view of the history of your training can be really encouraging and reassuring, at least from my standpoint. Another thing that's changed for me in the way I log things has been the start of my YouTube channel, because as I started to show my workouts, I learned a lot about myself as a lifter, because just taking a look at a piece of paper with some numbers on it for exercises, sets, and reps and weight, it doesn't tell the whole story. I learned that I had a lot of room for improvement as far as my squats, my bench, my deadlift, and all that goes. So I've become a much more efficient lifter because I've filmed myself as part of that. And I've become a lot stronger lifter because, again, I'm more efficient in what I do. So the video has really been helpful to me in that aspect. Doing other things and other programs like the inclusion of RPE-based training is something that I do in all my logging these days as well. And that's been helpful because let's say, for example, you do a set of 5 at 315 today. You take a look at your traditional training log and you see last month you also did a set of 5 at 315. You might think that you're not making progress, but if you were able to rate the RPE or the rate of perceived exertion of those lifts and saw that last month that was an RPE of 9 and now it's an RPE of 6, that does give you an indication that, again, things are trending upwards. So that's very helpful, and one of the reasons I include that. Now, with me personally, another thing that I've decided to start doing is when I started working with Bryce Lewis at The Strength Athlete, which has been just about a year as of this week, has been giving him a weekly video recap of my lifts and my feeling of my lifts. So in the past, I've always worked with coaches that, they have you fill out an Excel spreadsheet about your training, and typically you put in some notes here and there, or maybe you just submit that at the end of the week, or you give them an email update about how things are feeling. Maybe you do a Skype call every now and then. For me and Bryce, because I was filming everything as is, what I decided to do was submit a weekly video that's a recap of all my main lifts, my main compounds, as well as my overview feeling and thoughts of how that week went. So I'll talk about the lifts in general, if I thought they were slow, if I thought they were tough. I'll talk about how my body is feeling. I'll talk about how things in my life are going, if I feel stressed out from work, which happens from time to time. Maybe I was outside shoveling snow for a couple hours and I'm a little bit fatigued. If I have questions on technique or whatever the case may be, I'll put that into that weekly recap video that I give Bryce. And number one, I think this helps him get some more insight into my own training, which I think is very helpful. It's probably more annoying than it is helpful getting a weekly video from myself just talking about how I think everything's awful and how my lifting sucks. And from that standpoint, I'm sure it's helpful somewhat to him, but it's been invaluable to me as a lifter because I now have this repository of literally a year's worth of training, video, logs, diaries, journals that I'm talking about how I think my lifting is going and how I felt on those particular sessions. And it's so much more in depth than just looking at a log of sets, weights, and reps. It's so much more in depth than just looking at an RPE, looking at a video. It's my down to earth, honest feels. It's very raw. It's very truthful. I don't know what else to say because I'm running out of adjectives to describe it, but that's just what it is. So it's been helpful for me, especially right now, because I'm 3 days out from my next powerlifting competition. And the week or two before a meet, I always get a lot of self-doubt in my mind. My body always feels beat up. And it's very helpful to go back and look at the training cycle to know I hit some big numbers this training cycle. It's also very helpful to go back and look at the week or two before previous meets and know that I felt the exact same way back then, and the meets always end up going pretty well for me. So it's just been really encouraging for that. And I think going forward, regardless if I'm working with Bryce or another coach, I'm always going to keep these videos as far as a journal and log, and even if it's just for me. Now, that being said, I wanted to say that because what I'm going to do is I don't mind opening these up to other people. If other people can get something from them, I think that's great. One of the nice things about these videos that I give to Bryce is because initially they were planned to only go for him. They're like 2 to 5 minutes in length tops. They're raw. They don't take a lot of editing, and there's not a lot of fluff or jump cuts or edits or music. It's just literally lifting and me talking about how lifting goes. So I'm going to take all those videos which were previously unlisted. I think there's around 38 of them at this point. Just make them public. I put them in a playlist of the Strength Athlete. So if anyone's interested in checking those out, you can. And if you need some encouragement to check them out, I will tell you that there are 2 physique updates in there. So you get to see me in my underwears. You're welcome in advance. But regardless, that's how my training logs have evolved till then. I'm sure it's still going to evolve in the future. If you guys have any other tips or things you like to do, make sure you leave them in the comment section below. In the meantime, as always, thanks for watching and stay big.